Yeah. So the school up and running. Yes, this is the forum where we don't really celebrate our love here, nor do we celebrate wine, nor do we celebrate the blood of any living thing. This is a school that is not covered by the blood of Christ, and a school through which runs the blood of the Africans. They welcome Black Sunday School. Yes, this is a site where an alternative framework for acquiring knowledge is being established. The historical abuse of Black people, not only in the physical realm of enslavement, but at the deeper realm of mental control, mental abuse, psychological damage, spiritual disconnections that have reached us as a people collectively and as an individual, I and I. The damage inflicted on the Black brain was concentrated to the religious doctrines and indoctrinations of the slave owners, the vitality that they put behind religion, and the importance that they place on religion as a deception from the economic and political realities of this earth. I Black Sunday School, as is repeatedly stated each episode, sets out to examine what I consider the most deadly books put into our consciousness. And it's not the whole concept of a Bible that is the problematic. It is the specific books that have been put together Because in real language, Bible simply means book. But the Europeans have put this term holy in front of the word book. Give us the impression that this book is something that is even beyond us as a people. My brother told me recently that as a boy, him and his friend was playing and they had a Bible and the Bible dropped. And he picked it up and said, sorry God. That is the depth of the connection between that book and African people and the stories in that book. So much of our enslavement, though harsh and brutal in the physical world, the deepest part was in our psyche. The slave owners would get into our brain stories that eventually we would eventually believe and move beyond belief to think, in quotes, that they are true. So that leap from belief to know within the frame of the white man must be based upon the faith, but faith in the white man. You must have faith in the white man while we fear God and pray and wait. But let's highlight that move too far forward. Because this particular episode will leave with one of the three books that I think are important to deconstruct and deliver ourselves from it. Genesis, Exodus, and the book of Revelation. Three confounding texts that many of us are African people, black people, don't know how to interpret those English words. Have no clue. So we are given interpretations by those who we think have a greater knowledge and are closer to the Creator. So in Sunday school, the greatest principle of Sunday school on the plantation and through the church was that ask no questions. Just accept. Because any question you ask may be an affront to God. And we are told that there is the business of man and there's God business. And we have black people who have no place to get into God business. We leave that to the white man. And him is a link. The son to the God looks like the white man and represents the white man. So the white man is a link now to God. So you must have faith in the white man. The underpinning to this episode goes now to the first book of Genesis. And in that book, I'm saying as African people, we must revisit that particular story about the beginning. How did we come to accept this story as a truth? Because in the Sunday school, you could never ask any question about the beginning. How dare you? You just accept that there were 6 days to the creation of man and woman, and then God rested on the 7th day, and then we are into earth life. And we have no more concern about anything else, because we're now into earth. And we have to deal with the hurt, and the pain, and the murder, and the deception, and the jealousy, and we are now into earth. But we have to pause and revisit the stories that we were told that happened and existed as a truth before earth. So one line, and it is the most powerful line in the whole collection of writings called the Bible. The first line on the first page, I count 8 or 9 words that are put together. And these 8 or 9 words have become the biggest chain around the psychological mind of the African. This line is a line of thought. And thought is energy. Thought has power in it. I want the ones that know just think on this one line that is in the book. It says, in the beginning, 3 words, God created heaven and earth. 5 words. What do those 5 words when put together in that line mean? And how many people have ever examined what it means to accept those 8 words and to hold those 8 words as true? I am my young Sunday school. They always wonder something about that line, but who to ask. And even going to university and stuff, there is not anybody still that could really engage in that reasoning. That one line, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. So this Sunday school session now, we're going to examine that one line and all of its implications to affect black people for the last how many centuries we have been repeating this line. In the beginning, the first thing we have to recognize is that whoever is writing these words was not in the beginning. Whoever is penning these thoughts and ideas could not have been in existence, according to the story, until the day of the creation of men, which was on the 6th day of creation. So the first 4 or 5 days of creation, there were no human beings. So what is being told to us could not have been written by a human being who was there. So we are beginning to recognize in the initial that this line was created by the imagination of a man. Because there were no beings on this planet at that time in the mythology. In the beginning, man would ask question earlier, what was there before the beginning? But that is face the question. And the implication of a beginning suggests to the mind that there is a start. The concept of a start comes to the brain. And the brain extends its logic further to assume and presume that if there is a startup, if there's a start, then there is a startup. It's a kind of linear logic. But we can't query those things in Sunday school. Who do we ask about the beginning? And the beginning now of what? What is this story telling us about the beginning of? Yeah, in the beginning. Who's beginning? What is happening before the beginning? So we just continue along the line. It says God created. No, we dare not ask anything about God. We just subsume ourselves to that concept and we move on to created. I would ask whether you God created out of what? And the immediate response, well, out of nothing. So I'd always walk over the idea that so God created everything out of nothing. So what is nothing? Could nothing also be something? Could not love, and I had to move on. But the line continued by saying, God created heaven and earth. And we get a full stop. And those are the lines that have captured the imagination of every black man or black child or person who has been exposed to this mythology from the Christian version of creation. Unquestionable, it is never revisited from Sunday school to death. We say it, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And we never question about what created God. Where did God come from to manifest this creation? Out of nothing. What began? So it leaves these questions now are left to who we call philosophers. And I'm also black people. We don't think we have any philosophers. So you want white men to answer these questions. And then they pose these questions to themselves. So you get into philosophy now of existence and what is God. And how could God be a who when who refers to persons? You get the picture? So this interrogation is about philosophy in one line. Because after that one line, the story goes on to talk about what happens in earth. That the earth was void and without form, and darkness was upon the deep, and the Lord spoke, and things began to happen on the earth. And the story takes us now into the earth. A biblical earth history. But what about that initial line? About in the beginning? In the beginning, whose mind? And beginning now begins to speak about the concept of time. So we introduce the time. We realize that there are different concepts of time. In the economic world, they say time is money. In the world of the clock, it's 24 hours on the clock that makes a day. And in the movements of the seasons, we see time manifest itself as spring and fall and winter. So the transition of the seasons give us an indication of time. We also know of dimensions of called the present, and we know about the past. And we have an idea sometimes about the future. So those are different aspects of time. So what does Genesis speak about when it says in the beginning? Beginning of time? And can time have a beginning if it's only an idea? So we have to begin to be our own philosophers to create the African liberation that we need from the foundation of our thinking. It's the stories that we have been fed, force-fed, about our beginning. So if we as a people don't know how we begin, how can we define how we end? Or where is the end? Or what is the now? We have to shake out that false notion of a beginning and realize that time has no beginning. Time is infinite. It's an infinite past, a dynamic present, and there's the inevitable. But the white man has shown us that he can stop time and start time as he feel like. And can start time in the Garden of Eden, and it can stop time with Noah's flood. And it can restart time with zero from AD and BC. So this person here is the manipulator of the concept of time. We as black people must realize that we have been here from time immemorial. We understand the power of time because we are ancient beings. So how could our time have a beginning? And who would be the creator of the creator? Because if you accept that everything has a beginning, how did the creator begin? What, how, when, why? 5 W's of journalism. What, when, why, how, who. So, in the practical world today, change is taking place at government level, as we see in Western Africa, and the unity of the African people now, politically. But we need to complete the liberation at the base, to free ourselves now from that destructive beginning. Because in that beginning, we are led into a narrative that keeps us subjective and being conceptualized ourselves now as born in sin and shaped by iniquity. We follow that trajectory, we're forever doomed people. So to reverse the curse, we have to retract and return ourselves out of that beginning and land in Alkebu land, long before these stories were written. So it's the imagination of the African that has been captured by religion, particularly the story about in the beginning. So we must find time to look into that issue. Who could have written about a beginning? And where was the writer? And it forced us to believe that the book of Genesis was written by a man named Moses. Yes, we are indoctrinated into the knowledge that Moses is the writer of the first 5 books. So it is Moses then who writes about the beginning. Oh, where does he get that and convince us that this is where it began? It's a man idea. Even Moses is an allegory. So the truth is what we need to set us free. And the truth doesn't rest in that storyline in the beginning. It's no different than once upon a time. You cannot give a people knowledge about themselves and their history by beginning to tell them once upon a time or in the beginning. These are two nursery and startups, and they both manipulate the idea of time. Once upon a time, once mean one time. So once mean one time. So it's one time upon another time. There ain't no conscious beginning. Spirit here. In the beginning. What about before the beginning? So again, the Europeans then try to impress upon us that there is a startup, that someone started this universe. It's really them convince us now that God knows is the creator. Without giving any reasoning behind it, how did God come into existence? And if God is a creator, and if that creator also has a creator, then you realize that the creator is an idea that is based upon infinity. There is no end or beginning to the concept of the creator. Because the creator is another symbolism for the word energy. The energy. Mind is the creator. The brain is the creator. So we are told that there's an object beyond the brain and our mind consciousness that is the creator of the mind. And the creator of our brain and owns everything. That is the power of that universal desire of the white man to be in dominance. This idea of having dominion over all things. Is him right those things? And all things including fish, bird, and negroes, slaves. That first line needs a serious revisiting. And I want to think otherwise to share your views. How do we end up getting caught up in this story about in the beginning? And who's beginning? Because the Chinaman doesn't embrace the story about in the beginning. Because the Chinaman is not in the Garden of Eden. There's no evidence in the recording that the Indian or the Chinaman was anywhere near this narrative. So they are free. They are not any caught up in any situation where they're struggling between the forces of good and evil that is all in the sky and heaven and hell. So I'm saying, well, recheck them things now. The same line. One line we're looking at it. One line. It said, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. When we come into life with that as a foundation, we never ever revisit that. And we are afraid to revisit that foundation. But on the life that we are living, we have to contend with a thing called hell. And we'll never ask how and who created hell. And hell is what is in abundance right here, like we're living in a hell. And hell now is created by economics and politics. And men striving to maintain power over those who are powerless. But the genesis of the early story don't tell us anything about hell. Here that in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Singular construct of God, no gender. So God in that one line is it. In the beginning, it created heaven and earth. God, no he or she. So once you begin to speak about that concept of he and she, now you see the interference even more of the person who are writing. Because we were never introduced to the idea that God could be a woman. And in the beginning, she created heaven and earth. That was the alien view. But that we're putting power now into the feminine, which is what this doctrine suggests there is no feminine. Even in the kingdom of heaven that God created, there are no feminine ideas or principles or people or angels. So we have to revisit this creator God, which is a masculine construct. who's sexist and racist. We have the language now and we understand philosophy. And that in the philosophy are planted these negative ideas that black people hold about themselves without knowing. Check the line. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And we have to go to the very last book to know anything about heaven. Yeah, we have to go through the whole narrative of the Genesis and Exodus and play right through thousands and thousands of pages and words before we come now to the revelations that will tell us about what was happening in the heaven. But that piece of tie up backwardness. And you wonder why the black race moved backward. It's deep in the psyche and the philosophy about in the beginning. What in it? What beginning? And where was the beginning? Does that include the solar system in general? Sirius, other constellations, in the beginning of what? By whom? So black people, we have to remove ourselves from that beginner, that whole idea of something starting up and we just dropping it. And we just trying to be children of that and searching for our souls. We have to come out of the story. But to get out of the story, we have to get out of the beginning. That's where the story starts, in the beginning. If you accept that line, everything else in the book, you're prone to accept. You might be arguing disagree about certain interpretation, but then all agree is that in the beginning God created it. Watch it. No point of dispute. I saw it go. But who said that? What do you mean I saw it go? Who said that? And what is the nature of this God? We're finding ourselves in the same position and the same God that we are praying to, the same God, the same one that telling us we must pray to. So what is the nature of that God? That God is a nature, but nature oppressive. I'm talking about ideas, I'm talking about people and things. These are ideas. And ideas rule the world. Ideas rule the mind. Ideas settle in the subconscious mind and dominate conscious behavior without conscious knowing. So I'm asking each one and one now to revisit your own relationship to this line. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. How much of that you really internalize and believe and accept without even wondering about the nature of this creator? What created this creator that you hold on to? And does it really exist in reality? Reality is based upon certain dimensions of experience. And when we're examining events and people and historical time, there are certain questions we must address. And two of the areas that have to be addressed is when and where. Yeah, we'll talk about events and such, and you want to know whether it's real or not. You have to tell me when it happened and where. So a fundamental aspect of our understanding of reality must be based upon time, which is answered by when, and where, which is space. The thing have to occur in time and space for the mind to be able to make sense out of it, or the brain sense. So a story is given to us and says in the beginning. There's no foundation in time. So it's not a reality. In the same way, once upon a time is not based upon time. Or you begin and you say in a land far, far away. You're not giving me any concept of space. Where? In a place far, far away. Where? Long, long time ago. When? How do we ask these questions now to the Sunday school teacher? And as you graduate through Sunday school now to regular church, worse, you don't ask them. You even stop thinking. You naturally don't ask any curious questions of literature, you stop thinking. And then the mission accomplished. It matters not after that what level of degree or financial status you achieve as a black man or a black woman. You're still captured by the one line in the beginning. And then hold on, the depth of holding that line convinces you also that you're an end. Whole narrative you're about, and so you are looking at for the judgment day, you're looking for the rapture. It's a narrative established. And in that narrative, the real world continues with wars in Iraq and wars in Israel and Ukraine and wars in Africa. Wars continue to be fought on this earth. While the people caught up in a narrative about a rapture and end of the world. We see governments crumbling. We see the American empire in its implosive state. And we see the Chinese as a nation setting up itself to rise. So the earth cannot end. There's no end of the world. Governments and societies collapse, while other societies and governments rise. Such is the cycle. Such is the cycle of power. So this is a brief say about some of the what I consider the fundamental questions that we are unable to query as little children as it relates to Bible and Sunday school. And I'm on right now just on one page and on one line. The line that captures and opens the imagination at the very beginning of the book. It matters not how many books were taken out. It matters not who wrote the other books. You see this one line? This one line can sign you. Yes, this one line. So you need to know Jesus. And you could have known other things, but you see that one line where you're under the God that created heaven and earth. It's the person who created that God we're under. It's the people who constructed that idea of God that we are still under. And they use the language, using the technological skills to sustain that idea that we must surrender and bow to God. Because the greatest weapon that is being used against in the body now is fear. And the biggest fear that black people have is the fear of God. It's the greatest fear that has been implanted by force and brutality for centuries. And once you begin to become fearful of anything so deep, you become a coward quietly. So God will call us a race of cowards. Are we a race of cowards or are we a race of men? So once you bow under in that extent of not recognizing your racial identity and consciousness, you're still asleep. Yeah, that is the last line. The borders are being removed now between Chad and Niger and Burkina Faso becoming one giant nation. So we have to move the borders in our brain, move the borders in the mind that yes, that was up into a beginning. It's an artificial beginning. Artificial. There is no beginning to black people, and we have no end. And our beginning is beyond planet Earth. We are part of other solar systems. These white men know that. We are the only ones who don't. The Zimbabwean African knows about the relationship between the Zimbabwean ancients and the people and the civilizations that were on Mars. Likewise, the kingdom of Mali, within that is the dog gods who know about civilizations in Sirius. Yeah, we are not what they say. We can only be what they say if we hold on and stay under what they tell us. We have to lift up the shield now, the covering about this God that created us all. Rather that is I and I imagination created the concept of God. And God's simply powers of nature. So the sun will be seen as the Almighty God. Then there is rain, there's wind, there's water, there's agriculture. These now become forces of God, God forces. There's no set of angels and white people up in a place called heaven, which is above the sky and all of that stuff. Our things are right here. We've always been along the banks of the River Nile and along the Caribbean Islands. I guess I will That's what we know. So, if you want to make an input, you can say something on WhatsApp, maybe on Facebook, Doc Iman Block. You can drop me an email at iblak@yahoo.com, or you can subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the iBlocks underscore channel. I will help to facilitate the program. And of course, my co-host at times, Melanie Royalty, will be here again in another brief time. We will continue the exploration of the questions that we were so afraid to ask. And in that fear, we forget them. And later on, when we get caught in the economic world of money making, we say, boy, them things no matter no more, because them things can't help us make any money. But as we go further into the system, realize how it works, we need to concentrate more on how do we extricate our mentality that we can claim sovereignty now in our consciousness. If we hold on a God that is higher than our conscious eye, then we have surrendered. That is what Christian religion is all about. How do you get the African to surrender his eye and take on God? Yeah, it's a big burden. It's a large burden to carry. You have to take off that burden and begin to just deal with I and I. So, I'm going to find a new start. Yes, I love understood. Questioning one line. In the beginning. Was there before? Darkness before the beginning. Darkness before the beginning. So when I wrap it up in a way now, because most people, 99.9% of people in the world out there within the realm of the Christian doctrine and by biblical expressions. 99.5% of the people believe that there is a creator and that this creator is benevolent. And this creator created human beings in what they tell us his own likeness and image. And as African people or black people, we have to battle with that idea. Is that something that is truthful, or is that just an idea coming out of the mind of a man? So we are curious as we are born to know where things come from. You want, first of all, you want to know where you come from. And the moment where you come from, and where that come from, and we have this curiosity as to where things come from. So it becomes natural to be curious and to ask. So the European must find answers to give us and settle our curiosity because things are not right. We can't be slaves and you be owners and benefiting from the thing, yet everything is so even. Something is wrong. So they give us ideas and ideologies to explain about this creator God and how the thing gets so uneven. But the creator God created this earth and give us a set of drama when was angry first with what he created and destroyed it, leaving only 8 people. And we buy that entire narrative. We take that story from Adam and Eve straight into Noah's flood. No questions. And be part of the destruction. And we're going to be rebirthed now in an ark. Yeah, we as a whole African race now, we are going to return to the planet Earth now as a population from about 8 people. Other races must come as well. What time is this taking place? How many years are gone since certain events have passed? We don't know when. We just hear that, read that these things happen. When and where? As African people asking, where was Africa during Noah's flood? Where was the continent of Alkebulan during Noah's flood? We don't get no connection to Noah's flood in Africa. Where was China during the floods of Noah and the Chinaman? So more things cannot be answered because they're not connected to reality and truth. So the philosophy now of the white man is that, well, no matter how it looks now, there had to be a first cause. Something caused this. And we say, yes, everything has a first cause. And we say, okay. And every cause creates an effect. And we say, yes. So there's a thing now called cause and effect. And we say, okay, that makes sense. So they begin by telling us what effect is. The effect is the creation. The creation is the effect. So there must be a cause for the creation. You see now? So when you find the cause for the creation, you must ask what caused the cause. You must leave it. So we have a concept called the first cause. And then teach these things in university and philosophies. But everything have a first cause. But you cannot question first because there is an exception to every rule they create. Once you're going to find the truth, they create something called an exception to the rule. So it doesn't apply. We're trapped in an alien language. We don't know parts of speech. Collectively, we don't know the parts of speech. And in the English language, there are these 8 parts of speech. So each word is a part of speech that creates a certain image and impression in a mind's eye. In the beginning, it means that it has to ever start. It ever start, somebody started up. We don't say something, we say somebody started up. So we have looked on each line now with all the tools we have for analysis. Then is something that points to something part of speech. What do you call it? Soon tell you. Beginning is a construct, the whole idea. Beginning plays around with time. And if you have no concept of time, you're going to accept that time can begin. Once you accept that time can begin, then obviously time can end. Whatever have a beginning, it's going to have an end. Because the thing is finite. But time is not finite. Time is infinite. There's no beginning and there's no end to the concept and the energy called time. And in thermodynamic laws, they tell you that time, energy, space, none of these things can be created. None of these things can be destroyed. But these things have always existed. And black people, we as a people, we have always existed. Very hard to digest after coming out of living in the beginning for so long. But we as a people, we have always existed, and there's no evidence of the earth having a beginning either. These are things written by men who come and see the earth and leave it and make them utterances, and we grab onto it and believe it. We were shaking out our beliefs. And we say, well, no. So we have always existed. And the replicas and the evidence is on the earth. Millions of years, relics, they call artifacts of women, 3 million years old, found in Ethiopia. We have always existed as a people, black people, not called Africans or Jamaicans, but black people based upon their pigment power. Pyramid culture, pigment people. None of that is explained to us during Sunday school. Sunday school, we feel as though we are descendants of slaves. And man is an ascendant of the mighty, mighty pigmented people, of ancient and beyond Alkebulan. I call upon the forces of Atlantis as a part of our memory. So, coming up on the time to sign off, I Black Sunday School, Dr. Ayman Black, putting forward perspectives that I'm hoping once and one to take a look at without fear. But as I said before, the greatest impediment to a free mind and a free will is fear. And the biggest fear put into black people is the fear of the Almighty God, which none of us can speak to beyond the experiences of the God of the Son. It is that the Almighty God that African people know Him, the only Almighty God, without which there is no life on the planet Earth, which other mightier force is there. So we are some children, we are children of God, God the Atul Ra. And when we begin to reclaim those powers, then the literature that we have been presenting as African people will become more sensible to us. We begin to read Dr. Ben works and, our writers, John Henry Clark and J.A. Rogers. We begin to see those men now as our apostles and let them match Mark, Luke, and John and their mythologies. See, but that's taking us into another set of books. There's more confusion. We keep it at Genesis, Exodus, and Revelation. So, we're going to go out again. We're going to go out again. This time now, when we come forward, we're really gone. See, we're going out again. So pause.